Lucille O'Neal stood before Maison Éclat, her heart fluttering with the promise of a small birthday gift after a lifetime of sacrifice. But the door slammed shut, not with a lock, but with a doorman's cold stare, deeming her unworthy in her modest clothes. Lucille O'Neal stood in the heart of Manhattan, on the dazzling Fifth Avenue, where the lights from luxury storefronts reflected off the pavement like glittering jewels. She, a 72-year-old woman with silver hair neatly tied back, wore a light green t-shirt, slightly faded jeans, and white sneakers worn at the toes. This was her first trip to New York in years, a self-gifted reward after decades of hard work raising her children, including her giant of a son, Shaquille O'Neal, or as everyone called him, Big Shaq. Today was her birthday, and Lucille had decided to do something special. Step into a luxury store to buy herself a small gift. She paused in front of Maison Éclat, a boutique renowned for its exorbitant handbags, silky scarves, and an air of exclusivity reserved for the elite. Through the wide glass window, Lucille saw elegantly dressed customers, shopping bags in hand, moving through a lavish space with marble floors and warm golden lighting. She smiled faintly, whispering to herself, "Just something small, Lucille. A scarf, maybe a pair of gloves. You deserve it." She'd saved up all year for this moment, not to show off, but to mark a milestone. 72 years of resilience, from tough days in Newark to now. Lucille took a deep breath, smoothed out her t-shirt, and approached the double glass doors framed in gleaming gold. Outside stood a tall, lanky doorman in a glossy black suit, rigid as a statue. His name tag read Jacques. With slick back hair and sharp, cold eyes, Jacques surveyed the passers-by like a hawk hunting prey. A well-dressed couple approached just before her, the woman adorned with a pearl necklace, the man carrying a bag from another Fifth Avenue shop, and Jacques instantly flashed a polite smile, bowing as he opened the door. "Welcome to Maison Éclat, sir and madam," he said, his voice smooth as velvet. Lucille stepped forward right after them, her sneakers squeaking lightly on the sidewalk. She offered a friendly smile, but Jacques' grin vanished in an instant. His eyes scanned her from head to toe, silver hair, simple t-shirt, worn sneakers, and a faint frown creased his brow. Before Lucille could speak, he raised a hand to stop her, his tone icy. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but we're closed for a private event today." Lucille blinked, taken aback. "But I just saw people go in," she said, gesturing toward the couple who disappeared through the glass doors. Her voice was gentle but carried a note of honest confusion. Jacques pressed his lips tighter, his gaze hardening. "They're on the special guest list," he replied, as if that explained everything. Through the glass, Lucille could see other customers leisurely browsing, no sign of any private event in sight. She tried again, keeping her tone calm. "I just want to buy a small gift. It's my birthday today." Jacques raised an eyebrow, glancing at her sneakers once more, then spoke with a hint of sarcasm, just sharp enough to sting. "Perhaps you'd be better off trying the stores in Times Square. They're more suited to your budget." The air grew heavy. Lucille felt her face flush, not with anger, but with memories flooding back. Days working at the supermarket, scrubbing floors, and facing dismissive looks from those who judged her worth by her worn clothes or thin wallet. She stood there, a 72-year-old woman who'd overcome countless hardships to raise successful children. Yet in this moment, she was once again the young, single mother being turned away. But Lucille didn't cry. She'd learned long ago that tears wouldn't open any doors. "I see," she said, her voice steady. "Thank you." She turned and walked away under New York's gray sky as the first raindrops fell, streaking down her cheeks like the tears she refused to shed. Inside the store, Sophie, a young sales assistant with brown hair tied in a ponytail, stood near the counter, watching through the glass. She'd seen the whole exchange, her heart tightening at the flicker of hurt in Lucille's eyes. "Why'd he do that?" she whispered to a colleague, but the other woman just shrugged. "Jacques knows who belongs here and who doesn't. Don't worry about it." Sophie watched Lucille's figure fade into the rain, a wave of shame rising within her, but she didn't dare say more. This job was her livelihood, and she couldn't risk losing it. Back at her hotel, Lucille slipped off her wet sneakers, wrapped herself in the thin hotel robe, and sat by the window overlooking the city. Rain still fell, blurring the streetlights below. She hadn't cried when Jacques turned her away, but now in the quiet of her small room, A deep sadness settled in. She picked up her phone, scrolled through a few birthday texts from her kids, then pressed the video call button for Big Shaq. She hadn't planned to tell him about this, just wanted to hear his voice and shake off the bad day. But when Big Shaq's larger-than-life, beaming face filled the screen, her smile faltered, and the story of Maison Éclat slipped out. "Ma, who dared to do that to you?" Big Shaq asked, his tone a mix of humor and seriousness, eyes narrowing like they did when he was about to take on something big. Lucille gave a small laugh, brushing it off. "It's fine, Shaq. Just some foolish doorman." But Big Shaq didn't laugh. He leaned closer to the screen, his eyes glinting with an idea Lucille knew all too well. The look of a man about to fling open a door, not just for his mother, but for the whole world to see. The phone screen went dark as Big Shaq ended the call with his mother. He sat in his spacious Los Angeles office, neon lights from the street casting a glow through the window onto the pensive face of this 7'1" man. Big Shaq, with all his fame from the basketball court, massive endorsement deals, and a larger-than-life personality that endeared him to the world, was now unusually quiet. The oversized leather chair creaked under his weight as he leaned back, hands clasped, staring into the distance. Lucille had tried to downplay the incident, laughing it off as if being turned away from Maison Éclat was a trivial matter. But Big Shaq heard the sadness buried in her voice, a sadness he'd once sworn she'd never have to feel again. He stood up and walked to the window, gazing down at the bustling city below. In his mind, memories played like an old film reel. Days in Newark when Lucille worked from dawn till midnight, her hands rough from scrubbing floors and packing groceries, just to afford milk for him and his siblings. He recalled standing beside her as a clumsy, oversized 10-year-old, watching a store clerk eye her with contempt as she counted out coins for food. "When I grow up, I won't let anyone look at you like that again," he'd told her that night, his young voice brimming with determination. Now at 50, with millions in the bank and a towering reputation, he still felt a sharp pang knowing his mother, the woman who'd sacrificed everything, had been treated like an outsider at a luxury store. "Malik!" Big Shaq's voice boomed, echoing through the office as the door swung open instantly. Malik, his longtime assistant, stepped in with an iPad in hand, accustomed to his boss's sudden bursts of inspiration. Short, wiry, and bespectacled with round frames, Malik was always ready to tackle even Shaq's wildest requests. "What's up, boss?" Malik asked, pushing his glasses up the bridge of his nose. "Listen up," Big Shaq said, pointing at Malik like he was calling a play on the court. "I need you to dig up everything on that Maison Éclat store in New York. Who owns it? Who manages the building? How much it costs? Everything. My mom just got turned away by some doorman there, and I'm not letting this slide like it's nothing." He paused, flashing a half smile. "Big Shaq doesn't let his mom get dissed like that. You hear me?" Malik raised an eyebrow but didn't question it. He'd worked with Big Shaq long enough to know when the man was serious, and this time, there wasn't a trace of the usual playfulness in his eyes. "Got it, boss. I'll get on it." "But what do you mean by not letting it slide?" Malik tapped rapidly on his iPad, glancing up for an answer. Big Shaq strode to his desk, drumming his fingers on the wood. "I mean, I'm buying the place. The whole thing. The building. The brand. Even that smug doorman if I have to. Then I'll turn it into somewhere my mom and anyone can walk into with their head held high." He let out a big laugh, the signature rumble that shook the room. "Picture it, Malik. Big Shaq owning a luxury store. I'll put the biggest chair in there, sit out front greeting customers just for kicks." Malik chuckled along, but his fingers kept typing. "All right, boss. I'll call the legal and finance teams. But you sure about this?" "It's a big move." Big Shaq nodded, his eyes blazing. "As sure as I was when I shattered that backboard in college. Get it done." Within hours, Malik returned with a stack of printed documents and a triumphant grin. "Here's what I've got," he said, setting the papers on the desk. "Maison Éclat is owned by Lux Prestige, a French luxury conglomerate. But the Fifth Avenue building is leased from a Swiss real estate firm, Global Properties. Estimated value of the building is $120 million, not counting the brand. If you want both, it'll cost a pretty penny, even for your pockets." Big Shaq picked up a sheet, skimmed it, and set it down. $120 million, huh? I've spent more on pizza for the neighborhood, he joked, then sobered up. Call Global Properties. I want that building in my name within 48 hours. Then reach out to Lux Prestige. Tell them Big Shaq's got an offer they can't refuse." Malik nodded and left to get started. Big Shaq turned back to the window, hands in his pockets. He wasn't doing this out of anger or to flex. He thought of his mom, her standing in line in the rain to buy him things, her smile through every hardship. "You don't have to prove anything to anyone," he muttered, "but I'll make the world see your worth." Meanwhile, at Maison Éclat in New York, the atmosphere began to stir. Sophie, the young sales assistant, overheard a rumor from a coworker that the building had been sold. "Who bought it?" she asked, still holding an expensive silk scarf she was folding. The coworker shrugged. "No one knows yet, but Madame Claire's in an emergency meeting with management. Something big's going down." Madame Claire, the store manager with her hair in a tight bun and piercing eyes, stood in a private office, phone in hand. A cool voice came through the line. "The building's changed hands. The new owner will arrive in a few days to announce changes." Claire frowned. "Changes? We're still operating as usual." The voice replied, "Not for long. I'd prepare yourself." At the entrance, Jacques stood tall as ever, oblivious to the fact that the door he'd once shut in Lucille's face was about to usher in an entirely new chapter. Not just for him, but for all of Maison Éclat. Above New York, the rain had stopped, leaving shimmering puddles behind, as if signaling a fresh start drawing near. The Los Angeles skyline glittered outside Big Shaq's office window as Malik hustled back in, his iPad glowing with updates. The room smelled faintly of leather and the pizza boxes stacked in the corner from last night's late meeting. Big Shaq stood with his arms crossed, a towering figure in a black tracksuit, his usual grin replaced by a focused intensity that Malik recognized from the rare moments when his boss meant serious business. "All right, big man, here's the deal," Malik said, tapping the screen. "Global Properties got back to us. They're willing to sell the Fifth Avenue building for $125 million. Cash deal, no haggling. Lux Prestige is trickier. They're not thrilled about letting go of Maison Éclat, but they're open to a meeting. I've got the lawyers drafting an offer for the brand too. You're looking at north of $200 million total if you want both." He paused, adjusting his glasses. "You sure you want to drop that kind of coin just because some doorman dissed your mom?" Big Shaq chuckled, the sound rumbling like distant thunder. "Malik, I once spent $1 million on a dunk contest just to mess with my buddies. This ain't about the money, it's about the principle. My mom walked out of that place feeling like she didn't belong, and I'm going to make sure no one else ever feels that way again." He pointed a massive finger at Malik. "Get it done. I want the keys to that building by the end of the week and set up a meeting with Lux Prestige in New York. We're flying out tomorrow." Malik nodded, already typing furiously. "On it, boss. Anything else?" "Yeah," Big Shaq said, his grin creeping back. "Plan something big. I'm talking red carpet, lights, music, the whole Shaq-tacular vibe. I want every fancy pants in New York there when I roll up, and make sure my mom gets an invite. Something classy, gold lettering, the works. She's the star of the show, even if she doesn't know it yet." Malik smirked. "You're turning a luxury store into a Shaq party. I love it. I'll call the event team." He darted out, leaving Big Shaq alone with his thoughts. The big man walked over to a shelf lined with trophies and framed photos. One caught his eye, a faded picture of him at 12, towering over Lucille as she smiled tiredly in a diner uniform. He'd promised her back then that he'd make the world see her the way he did. Strong, unstoppable, worthy of every damn door being flung wide open. "Time to cash that check, Ma," he muttered, tapping the frame. Meanwhile, across the country in New York, Maison Éclat buzzed with unease. Sophie stood behind the counter, folding a $3,000 silk scarf with mechanical precision, her mind replaying the image of Lucille walking away in the rain. She'd wanted to chase after her, maybe offer an umbrella or an apology, but fear had glued her feet to the floor. Now, whispers were spreading through the staff like wildfire. The building had been sold. No one knew who the new owner was, but Madame Claire had been locked in her office all morning, her usually composed voice rising in sharp bursts over the phone. "What's going on?" Sophie asked Philippe, a security guard with a thick Brooklyn accent, as he passed by with a coffee. He shrugged, his broad shoulders slumping. "Beats me. Claire's freaking out, though. Word is the new owner's coming in a couple days to shake things up. Jacques thinks it's some Russian billionaire, but he's just guessing." Sophie glanced toward the entrance, where Jacques stood in his pristine black suit, chest puffed out like a peacock. He'd been smug all day, brushing off the rumors. Maison Éclat has been here for decades, he'd said earlier, loud enough for everyone to hear. No one's changing a thing. We're untouchable. Sophie wasn't so sure. She'd seen the hurt in that silver-haired woman's eyes, and something told her this wasn't a coincidence. Upstairs, Madame Claire hung up the phone, her manicured nails tapping the desk. The call from Lux Prestige had been curt. The building was gone, and the new owner wanted to meet about the brand itself. "This is absurd," she muttered, smoothing her tight bun. She'd spent 15 years turning Maison Éclat into a Fifth Avenue jewel, catering to the elite, keeping out the riffraff. Now some mystery buyer thought they could waltz in and rewrite the rules. She stood, straightened her blazer, and called the staff to the back room. "Listen up," she said as the team gathered, their faces a mix of curiosity and nerves. "The building has a new owner. We don't know who yet, but they're planning an event here in 2 days. Closed to the public, invitation only. We'll be hosting New York's elite. Designers, celebrities, the works. I expect perfection." Her eyes narrowed. "Whatever this is, we'll show them Maison Éclat doesn't bend." Jacques smirked from the back. "Probably just some rich guy flexing. Nothing changes." Sophie stayed quiet, her stomach twisting. She couldn't shake the feeling that this was bigger than anyone realized. Back in her hotel room, Lucille sipped tea by the window, the New York skyline stretching out before her. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets slick and reflective. She'd brushed off the Maison Éclat incident with Big Shaq, telling him it wasn't worth fussing over, but his silence on the call had worried her. That boy, well, man now, had a way of turning small things into giant spectacles. She smiled, thinking of the time he'd bought an entire ice cream truck just to cheer her up after a tough week. "Don't you go doing something crazy, Shaquille," she murmured, shaking her head. A knock at the door startled her. A hotel staffer stood there, holding a silver tray with a cream-colored envelope. "For you, Mrs. O'Neal," he said with a slight bow. Lucille took it, her fingers tracing the gold lettering. "You are cordially invited to a special event at Maison Éclat, Fifth Avenue. This Friday at 7 p.m. Formal attire requested." No sender, just the address and a faint embossed logo of the store. She frowned. "This has Shaq written all over it," she said to herself, half amused, half worried. She opened her suitcase, pulling out a simple navy dress she'd packed for emergencies. It wasn't flashy, but it was elegant in its own way, with clean lines and a soft shimmer. "If he's up to something, I'd better look the part," she said, hanging it up. She didn't call Big Shaq to ask. He just dodged the question with a laugh. Whatever he was planning, she'd find out soon enough. In Los Angeles, Big Shaq boarded his private jet the next morning, Malik in tow with a briefcase full of contracts. The deal for the building was nearly sealed. Lawyers were finalizing the paperwork, and Lux Prestige had agreed to meet in New York that afternoon. "You ready to shake up the Big Apple, boss?" Malik asked as the plane taxied down the runway. Big Shaq leaned back in his oversized seat, grinning. "Man, I was born ready. We're not just buying a store. We're building a door. A big one. For my mom, for me, for every kid who ever got told they don't belong." He paused, his voice softening. "She worked too hard for too long to let some suit tell her she's not good enough. We're fixing that, Malik. One giant step at a time." The jet lifted off, carrying Big Shaq toward New York, and the moment that would turn a single rejection into a revolution. Back at Maison Éclat, the staff scrambled to prepare for the mysterious event, unaware that the man about to walk through their doors was bigger, literally and figuratively, than any of them could imagine. The stage was set, the players in place, and the city held its breath, waiting for the curtain to rise. The sun dipped below the New York skyline, casting a golden glow over Fifth Avenue as limousines lined the street outside Maison Éclat. A red carpet stretched from the curb to the gleaming glass doors, flanked by velvet ropes and flashing cameras. The air buzzed with anticipation. Fashion designers, celebrities, and business tycoons milled about, sipping champagne from trays carried by waiters in crisp black uniforms. A small orchestra played softly inside, the notes drifting out into the evening. The sign on the door read, "Closed for special event," but the energy suggested something monumental was about to unfold. Inside, the staff scurried to perfect every detail. Sophie adjusted a display of diamond-encrusted handbags, her hands trembling slightly. She'd spent the day overhearing wild theories. Some said a tech billionaire had bought the place. Others whispered about a European royal. Madame Claire paced near the grand staircase, her heels clicking on the marble floor, barking orders to ensure the store shimmered like a jewel. "This is our moment," she'd told the team earlier. "Whoever this new owner is, we'll show them Maison Éclat is unmatched." Jacques stood at his post by the door, chest puffed out, greeting guests with a practiced smile and a deep bow. "Welcome to Maison Éclat," he said again and again, oblivious to the storm brewing just beyond his polished exterior. Lucille O'Neal stepped out of a taxi a block away, smoothing her navy dress as she approached the chaos. The dress hugged her frame modestly, its simplicity offset by a silver brooch she'd pinned near the collar, a gift from Big Shaq years ago. She hadn't worn heels, opting instead for comfortable flats, but she carried herself with a quiet dignity that turned heads. The cameras flashed as she neared the entrance, reporters murmuring about the mystery woman in blue. Jacques spotted her, his eyes skimming her outfit, and for a split second, a flicker of recognition crossed his face. But it vanished as quickly as it came. He didn't connect this elegant figure with the woman he'd turned away days before. "Welcome to Maison Éclat, madam," he said, bowing low, his voice dripping with charm. Lucille nodded, her lips curving slightly. "Nice to be welcome this time," she replied, her tone gentle but pointed. Jacques blinked, confused, but she brushed past him into the store before he could respond. Inside, the space was a sea of glittering gowns and tailored suits, the air thick with perfume and excitement. Sophie caught Lucille's eye from across the room, offering a shy smile. Lucille returned it, sensing the girl's unease, and wondered what role she'd play in whatever Big Shaq had cooked up. At precisely 7:00 p.m., the lights dimmed and the orchestra fell silent. A voice boomed through hidden speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, please direct your attention to the grand staircase for a special announcement from the new owner of Maison Éclat." The crowd turned as one, necks craning toward the top of the stairs. A hush fell over the room, broken only by the rustle of silk and the clink of glasses being set down. Then a massive figure emerged from the shadows, stepping into the spotlight. Big Shaq stood there, all 7 feet 1 inch of him, dressed in a custom black suit that hugged his broad shoulders like armor. His presence filled the room, commanding every eye without effort. Madame Claire gasped, her clipboard slipping an inch in her hand. Jacques froze mid-bow, his jaw dropping. Sophie's eyes widened, a grin tugging at her lips. Whispers erupted. "Is that Shaquille O'Neal? Big Shaq owns this place?" As phones popped out to snap discreet photos. Big Shaq descended the stairs slowly, each step deliberate, the spotlight glinting off his shaved head. He reached the bottom, accepted a champagne flute from a waiter, and raised it with a grin. "Good evening, y'all," he said, his deep voice rumbling through the store. "Thanks for coming out on short notice. I know you're wondering why a guy who dunked basketballs and sold sneakers is standing in a fancy store like this." A few laughs rippled through the crowd, but most stayed silent, hanging on his words. "Well, I got a story for you, but first I need someone special up here with me. Ma, come on up." All eyes turned to Lucille. She froze, her hand tightening around her purse. "Oh, Shaquille," she murmured, but she moved forward, parting the crowd with grace. Jacques watched her pass, his face paling as realization hit. He'd turned this woman away, and now she was walking beside the new owner. Lucille reached Big Shaq's side and he took her hand, squeezing it gently. "This is my mom, Lucille O'Neal," he said, pride ringing in his voice. "The strongest woman I know. Raised me and my siblings on grit and love, no handouts." The crowd clapped politely, though some recognized Lucille from her quiet fame as a philanthropist. Big Shaq held up a hand, silencing them. "A few days ago, my mom came to Maison Éclat for her birthday. Wanted to buy herself something nice. First time in her life she could splurge a little, but she didn't get past the door." He paused, letting the words sink in. Not because it was closed, not because they were out of stock, but because she didn't look like she belonged. Some guy in a suit decided she wasn't good enough. A murmur spread through the room, eyes darting to Jacques, who shrank against the wall. Lucille touched Big Shaq's arm, whispering, "You don't have to." But he shook his head, determined. I bought this place not just 'cause of that, he continued. One rude dude doesn't define a business. But it got me thinking, what's luxury really about? Shutting people out? Making folks feel small? Nah, that ain't it. Madame Claire stepped forward, her face flushed. Mr. O'Neal, please let me apologize. Big Shaq waved her off. No need, Madame Claire. This ain't about blame. It's about what's possible. He turned back to the crowd, his voice growing firm. Growing up, my mom worked 3 jobs, sometimes 4, just to keep food on the table. Places like this? Doors were locked tight to her. Today that changes, not just for her, but for everybody who's ever been judged by their sneakers instead of their soul. The room went quiet, the weight of his words settling in. Sophie felt her heart race. This was bigger than she'd imagined. Starting next month, Big Shaq announced, Maison Éclat is going to be the first luxury spot with a heart. We're keeping the quality, none of that cheap stuff, but 20% of every dollar goes to single parents and their kids, people like my mom back in the day. Another 30% of our inventory, that's the community collection. Same high-end gear, discounted for teachers, nurses, firefighters, folks who keep the world running, and the doors, wide open to anybody who walks in. Designers exchanged nervous glances. Would this dilute their brand? Big Shaq caught it, grinning. Don't worry, y'all. Prices stay high. Quality stays top-notch. But who gets to walk in and feel welcome? That's the game changer. He raised his glass. Details tomorrow. Tonight, enjoy the party. We got champagne, music, and a new vibe. Let's roll. The orchestra kicked back in, waiters circulated, and the crowd erupted into chatter. Excited, curious, a little stunned. Big Shaq led Lucille off to a quiet corner. Sorry if I put you on the spot, Mom, he said, scratching his neck. Lucille laughed softly, her cheeks rosy. Shaquille, buying a whole store? That's a bit much, even for you. He shrugged, that big, goofy grin spreading. When have I ever done anything small? Besides, you deserve it, and more. Lucille squeezed his hand, her eyes misty. Across the room, Sophie watched them, a spark of hope igniting in her chest. Jacques slipped out of sight, his smugness gone. Madame Claire fielded questions she couldn't answer. And outside, the city buzzed with rumors of Big Shaq's move, the first ripples of a wave that would soon crash far beyond Fifth Avenue. The morning after the big event, Maison Éclat was a hive of activity, though its doors remained locked to the public. Outside, a small crowd of curious onlookers and reporters lingered, snapping photos of the closed for renovation sign taped to the glass. Inside, a team of architects, designers, and Big Shaq's personal crew swarmed the space, armed with clipboards, measuring tapes, and a buzz of purpose. The store's sleek marble floors and gilded fixtures still gleamed, but something new was taking shape, a shift that went beyond paint and polish. Big Shaq stood near the grand staircase, his massive frame dwarfing the clipboard-wielding architect beside him. He'd swapped the suit for a black hoodie with Shaq Daddy emblazoned across the chest, his grin wide as he pointed at a blueprint. Right here, he said, tapping the paper. We're keeping the fancy stuff on the main floor. Bags, scarves, all that jazz. But upstairs, that's the community collection spot. I want it open, bright, welcoming, like you're walking into Shaq's living room, not some stuck-up museum. The architect, a wiry man named Leo, nodded furiously, scribbling notes. Got it, Mr. O'Neal. We'll install a spiral staircase for access. Nothing too flashy. Keeps the flow natural. Timeline's tight, but we'll make it work. Big Shaq clapped him on the shoulder, nearly knocking him off balance. That's my man. Let's move fast. Reopening's in a week. Downstairs, Madame Claire called an emergency staff meeting in the back room. The team filed in. Salespeople, security, cleaners, and a noticeably subdued Jacques. All eyes darting between her and the chaos beyond the door. Sophie sat near the front, twisting a strand of hair around her finger, while Philippe leaned against the wall, arms crossed. Madame Claire cleared her throat, her usual poise fraying at the edges. As you know, Mr. O'Neal is our new owner, she began, her voice tight. He's reimagining Maison Éclat. I've just spoken with him, and he's requested everyone's presence at 10 hours for an announcement. Are we fired? A nervous voice piped up from the back. Madame Claire hesitated. I don't believe so. He said his plans involve the current team. Beyond that, I can't say. She glanced at Jacques, who stared at his shoes, his usual swagger nowhere in sight. At 10 yards sharp, Big Shaq strode in, Malik trailing with a tablet. The room snapped to attention, chairs scraping as people straightened up. "Morning, y'all," Big Shaq said, his voice filling the space. "I know change is weird. Trust me, I felt it when I switched from basketball to DJing. But here's the deal. Maison Éclat ain't just a store anymore. It's a statement." He paused, scanning the faces. "This place has history, fancy bags, big names, but it's also had a habit of shutting folks out. That ends now." He took the tablet from Malik, tapping it to light up a screen on the wall. A new logo appeared. Maison Éclat's classic emblem, now circled by the words quality, craft, community. "This is the Lucille project," he said, his tone firm. "Named after my mom. Starting next week, we're still selling the best stuff. Don't worry, no knockoffs here. But 20% of profits go to single parents and their kids. Another 30% of inventory is the community collection, discounted for teachers, nurses, folks who grind for others. And the big one, these doors open to everybody. Your job? Make every single person feel like they belong, no matter what they're wearing." The room buzzed with whispers. Madame Claire raised a hand. "Mr. O'Neal, how do we verify who qualifies for the discounts?" Big Shaq grinned. "Good question. We're setting up an online system. People apply, get a card, no hassle at the door. Keeps it smooth." His eyes flicked to Jacques, who flinched slightly. "No more guessing who's worthy. That's over." Sophie felt a smile creep onto her face. This was what she'd hoped for, a chance to fix what she'd seen go wrong. Big Shaq continued, "If this ain't your vibe, no hard feelings. You'll get a fat severance and walk away. But if you stay, you're part of something big. Maybe bigger than this whole industry's ever seen. One catch. On reopening day, I want y'all to shop here in regular clothes. Jeans, sneakers, whatever. Feel what it's like to be welcomed when you don't look the part." The team nodded, some excited, others wary. Big Shaq wrapped up. "I'll be back next week to kick this off. My crew's here to help. Let's make it happen." He left, leaving the room abuzz. Sophie turned to Philippe. "This is wild, right?" He smirked. "Wild? Girl, it's Shaq. What did you expect?" Over the next week, Maison Éclat transformed. The main floor stayed pristine, its luxury displays untouched, but a sleek spiral staircase now led to a second level bathed in natural light. There, the community collection took shape. Handbags, scarves, and shoes at prices that didn't make your eyes water, reserved for cardholders. A small workshop space was added too, where local artisans could showcase their work alongside big-name designers. Big Shaq popped in daily, joking with the crew while keeping an eye on progress. "Put some soul in it," he'd bellow, slapping a wall like it needed encouragement. Jacques surprised everyone by not quitting. Instead, he approached Big Shaq one afternoon, his voice low. "I messed up with your mom, sir. I've been doing this too long, judging people by their shoes. I'd like to stay, learn how to do it right." Big Shaq studied him, then nodded. "Everybody gets a shot to grow, man, but you're hitting the streets first. Spend a month with a community center downtown. See what's real." Jacques swallowed hard but agreed. Sophie stepped up too, volunteering to lead a welcome team to ensure every customer felt valued. She spent nights drafting ideas, training sessions, feedback forms, determined to make it work. Lucille visited often, offering quiet suggestions from her years of navigating exclusion. "It's the little things," she told Sophie once, adjusting a scarf display. "A smile, a hello. It's what opens doors." The night before the reopening, Big Shaq found Lucille in the empty store, staring at the new sign above the entrance. Maison Éclat, quality, craft, community. "Nervous?" she asked, her voice soft. He shrugged, hands in his pockets. "A little. This ain't like slamming a dunk. If it flops, we can't just try again tomorrow." Lucille took his arm. "You've already won, Shaquille. You made people think about who gets left out. That's enough." He smiled. "You cutting the ribbon tomorrow, Mom? This is your show." She laughed. "I'll cut it, but you're the one making the noise." Reopening day dawned bright, the sun glinting off Fifth Avenue. 2 lines formed outside, one for regular customers, one for community card holders, Teachers, nurses, firefighters clutching their new passes with pride. Big Shaq stood with Lucille at the door, a giant pair of gold scissors in her hands. Reporters jostled for shots, the crowd buzzing with excitement. "Ready, Ma?" he asked, towering over her. She nodded, her silver hair catching the light. "Ready." At 10 wahas, Lucille raised the scissors, her hands steady. "This door's for all of us," she said, her voice carrying over the chatter. The blades snipped through the ribbon, and the crowd cheered. Jacques stepped forward, his uniform crisp, and opened the door wide. "Welcome to Maison Éclat, Mrs. O'Neal," he said, bowing slightly. "It's an honor." Lucille smiled, stepping inside first, Big Shaq right behind her. The store came alive. Wealthy regulars browsed the main floor, while upstairs a teacher named Maria picked out a scarf with trembling hands. "I never thought I'd shop here," she told Sophie, who guided her with a grin. "Welcome to the new Maison," Sophie replied. Across the room, a firefighter tried on a leather wallet, laughing with his wife. The workshop hummed as a young designer sold her first piece, a beaded clutch, to a fashion editor who'd wandered up out of curiosity. Big Shaq watched it all, his grin wide. Madame Claire approached, her clipboard trembling. "Sales are up 40% already," she whispered. "The community collection's nearly gone." He nodded. "Told you, people want to feel good, not just look good." Outside, the story spread. Headlines blared, "Big Shaq opens doors at Maison Éclat," and a ripple began that would soon reach far beyond New York. The reopening of Maison Éclat wasn't just a one-day splash. It was a tidal wave. By noon, the store was packed, a kaleidoscope of people weaving through its gleaming aisles. Upstairs, the community collection sold out in hours, leaving Sophie scrambling to reorder stock while cardholders, nurses, teachers, sanitation workers beamed with pride over their purchases. Downstairs, regular customers, drawn by the buzz, browsed alongside them, some pausing to chat with the newcomers. A Wall Street exec in a tailored suit swapped stories with a firefighter about their kids. A fashion blogger snapped selfies with a kindergarten teacher clutching a discounted silk scarf. The air hummed with a strange electric unity, as if the invisible walls of class and wealth had cracked open. Outside, the media frenzy hit fever pitch. Reporters camped on Fifth Avenue, microphones thrust toward anyone leaving the store. "Big Shaq buys luxury boutique." "After Mom's rejection," blared across news ticker tapes. Social media exploded. Hashtags like Lucille's door and Shaq changes. The game trended worldwide as people shared their own tales of being judged or turned away. "Saved up for a suit once," a Chicago barber tweeted, "and the clerk followed me like I was gonna steal it. Took my dad to a fancy spot for his 70th, a Miami nurse posted, and they acted like we were lost." Thousands of stories poured in, each one a thread in a tapestry of quiet indignities now being unraveled. Big Shaq moved through the store like a gentle giant, shaking hands, cracking jokes, and posing for photos. "Yo, you look fly in that bag," he boomed to a paramedic clutching a leather satchel from the community collection. The guy laughed, blushing. "Never thought I'd own something this nice, man." "Thanks." Big Shaq clapped him on the back. "That's what we're here for, making the good stuff real for real people." Madame Claire hovered nearby, her clipboard a lifeline as she tracked the chaos. "Mr. O'Neal," she said, catching him between handshakes, "sales are triple our best day last year. Triple. And the publicity, it's everywhere." Big Shaq grinned. "Told you, Claire. Open the doors and the people come running. Now keep that vibe going." She nodded, a rare smile breaking through her stern facade. Jacques stood at the entrance, his transformation subtle but real. After his month at the downtown community center, serving meals, hearing stories from folks who'd been invisible to him for years, he'd come back different. His smile wasn't forced now. It reached his eyes. "Welcome to Maison Éclat," he said to a woman in a worn jacket, stepping aside with a nod. She hesitated, then walked in, head high. Sophie caught the moment and scribbled it in her notebook. She'd taken on the role of welcome team lead with a passion, training staff to spot and fix those old habits of exclusion. Lucille floated through it all, a quiet anchor in the storm. She spent the day talking to customers, her warm voice cutting through the noise. "What do you do?" she asked a young woman browsing scarves upstairs. I'm a social worker, the woman replied, shyly showing her community card. This is my first time in a place like this. Lucille smiled, adjusting the scarf around her shoulders. You belong here, honey. Don't ever let anyone tell you different. The woman's eyes glistened as she nodded. By the end of the first week, Maison Éclat was a phenomenon. Sales soared, driven not just by curiosity, but by a new loyalty. People came back because they felt seen. The story hit morning shows with Big Shaq and Lucille beaming in via satellite. Some call it a stunt, a host pressed. What do you say? Big Shaq shrugged, his grin wide. If it's a stunt that makes people feel good about themselves, I'll take it. I've been broke and I've been loaded. How folks treat you shouldn't flip with your bank account. Lucille added softly, it's about dignity. That's all any of us want. Not everyone cheered. A few luxury brands threatened to pull their goods, grumbling about diluted exclusivity. Let 'em go, Big Shaq told Madame Claire over the phone. For everyone that walks, 10 more will beg to jump in when they see the numbers. He was right. Within days, designers were calling Malik, pitching ideas for community collection pieces. The tide was turning, and Maison Éclat was the rock that started the ripple. 2 weeks in, Big Shaq got a call from the CEO of a rival Fifth Avenue boutique. We're thinking of trying something like your Lucille project, the man said, voice cautious. Can we meet? Big Shaq laughed. Man, I thought y'all would hold out longer. Come by tomorrow. Bring coffee. Soon emails flooded Malik's inbox from retailers in LA, Miami, even Paris, all sniffing around the model. You broke 'em, boss, Malik said, shaking his head. They're scared to be left behind. Lucille became an unexpected star. Fashion magazines splashed her silver hair and navy dress across their covers, dubbing her the face of new luxury. She waved off the fuss, but Big Shaq soaked it in. Ma, you're a legend now, he teased over dinner at her hotel. She swatted his arm. I just wanted a scarf, Shaquille. You're the one who turned it into a circus. He laughed loud and free. And it's the best circus in town. 3 months later, Maison Éclat closed for a weekend overhaul. When it reopened, the transformation was complete. The main floor gleamed as ever, but the upstairs community space now had cozy seating and a wall of thank you notes from card holders. The workshop thrived with local artisans selling out handmade goods. 2 lines formed daily, one for regulars, one for community card holders, and Jacques greeted both with equal warmth. Sophie's welcome team wore silver pins, a quiet signal of their mission. It's simple, she told her crew. Make everyone feel like they're home. The impact spread beyond retail. Schools launched Dignity Days inspired by Lucille's story. Hospitals trained staff to treat every patient like royalty. Big Shaq marveled at it all, reading letters from folks who'd felt invisible until now. My son's a teacher, one wrote. He bought a wallet from your store. Says it's the first time he felt his work mattered. Another read, I used to judge people by their clothes. You woke me up. A year after the transformation, Maison Éclat hosted an anniversary celebration. The store glowed with lights, packed with staff, card holders, and a smattering of press. Lucille stood near a table of cupcakes, Big Shaq's idea, chatting with Sophie, now a poised director of community outreach. Can't believe it's been a year, Sophie said, adjusting her silver pin. Lucille smiled. One closed door, and look what happened. Across the room, Jacques guided a group of retail execs, explaining how he'd once guarded the entrance like a fortress. Took me a month with folks who'd been shut out to get it, he said. Now I can't imagine doing it the old way. Madame Claire, promoted to oversee new Maison Éclat branches in LA and Tokyo, mingled with designers who jumped on the community bandwagon. Big Shaq took the stage at noon, his voice booming. A year ago, we started something crazy. They said luxury and inclusion don't mix. Well, we proved them wrong. Profits are up, people are happy, and my mom's a rock star. The crowd laughed, clapping as he waved Lucille up. She joined him, shaking her head. You're too much, Shaquille. He grinned, then grew serious. One last thing. When I was 22, broke as a joke, I saved up to buy Ma a necklace for her birthday. Walked into a store in Jersey, and the guy wouldn't even look at me. Thought I was trouble. I swore I'd make sure she never felt that again. So today we're launching the Lucille Dignity Fund, $100 million to fix places that judge folks by their outsides, not their insides. The room erupted, tears mixing with cheers. Lucille hugged him, whispering, "You kept your promise." Later, they stood by the entrance where she'd once been turned away, watching a diverse crowd flow in. Rich, poor, famous, unknown, all welcome the same. "This is it, Ma," Big Shaq said. "The door I always wanted for you, for everybody." Lucille squeezed his hand. "And it's wide open now." Together, they stepped back, knowing this was their legacy. A door once closed, now a gateway for all.